بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So Alhamdulillah, again, we've had another few weeks off. Was how many weeks off? Two? One or two? You guys are, you're enjoying these holidays, subhanAllah. Right. Because of that, I don't want to take too much time. I want to do the revision, but I don't want to take too much time from the lesson. Inshallah, today's lesson is going to be about talking about the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I want to try to finish the whole section at least so that we can move on to the other sections for next lesson, inshallah. Also, this week I didn't get any time whatsoever to make the worksheets as I was traveling and so on. So I just made a few pages before Salah, and I did not have time to translate a lot of the statements. Normally I translate all of the statements, especially the longer ones, so it's easier for you guys to follow along, especially the longer ones. I didn't get time to do that. So what I would suggest is what I'll do is those that are a bit shorter, or those that may be like the first one in that chapter or that point, I mention that a bit slowly so you can write those down. As for the others, I'll just say them a bit quicker, and then you can use the recordings and inshallah just write it up yourselves. Otherwise, the time of the lesson is going to take too long. Okay, and most of the aqwal, it'll just mainly be, I've made a point and then I'm just backing that point up with a statement. So even if even for your revision, don't need to memorize those statements. The main thing is the points that I mentioned, inshallah. And maybe an easy way to do it, a good way to do it, is if you get together with a few other brothers, let's say there's four of you, let's say the lesson is 1 hour, right? Just split it. You say you take the first 15 minutes, you take the second 15, you take the third 15, you take the fourth 15, and all of the aqwal, type them up, and then just put it together, and you've got, maybe into like a Word document or something, and you have all of the statements in that lesson, and you've saved your time. You saved the time. So instead of, because I know sometimes, especially long statements, I've had to do it as well. You watch it, pause it, write it down, and pause it again. It takes like double, triple the time sometimes of the actual lesson. So if you split it, inshallah, that'll be a lot easier. That may be a way to do it, especially for today's lesson, bi'idhnillah. Now, I've sent the worksheets just before Salah. Now, so where we stopped was talking about so we're on Hadith Jibreel. We're still on Hadith number 2. And as I mentioned, the first few ahadith, we are going into a lot more detail. Okay, and most likely the first 5 ahadith, maybe not the fourth one, but generally, inshallah, we're going to go into a lot more detail because these ahadith are more foundational ahadith, and they are more, they discuss those topics which you're going to be study again and again and again and again. So those ones are rather you guys know them with detail, inshallah. And as for the rest of the hadith, we'll just do in a normal explanation of them, inshallah. So we're still on Hadith Jibreel, and we have reached the question of the Prophet ﷺ where he is asked, the question of Jibreel alayhi salam, where he asks the Prophet ﷺ, inform me about Iman, and the Prophet ﷺ mentions the 6 pillars of Iman. And we talked about Iman already. I think we took 3 lessons talking about Iman, the meaning of Iman, the principles regarding Iman, the different types of people regarding Iman, some technical terminologies regarding Iman, major sins, what's the belief of Ahl Sunnah regarding major sins, and so on. So we talked about Iman in depth. After talking about Iman, now we're going to move on to the 6 pillars of Iman. We're going to move on to the 6 pillars of Iman. And the 6 pillars of Iman, as we mentioned previously, is to believe and tu'mina billah, to believe in Allah, wa malaikatihi, and His angels, wa kutubihi, and His books, wa rusulihi, and His messengers, wa bil yawm al-akhir, and in the last day, wa bil qadri khayrihi wa sharrihi, and in the divine decree, the good of it and bad of it. So these are the 6 pillars of Iman. Inshallah, the first pillar, which is regarding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that will probably be the longest. Then the angels, the books, the messengers will be quite short. The last day, I'll probably keep it short because last day you can make it very long. You can talk about every single thing that happens on the Day of Judgment, which I don't think I'm going to do, not for this hadith anyway, because I think just make it way too long. because I remember we studied in Medina, we did a whole semester on it. A whole semester, I think there were 3 lessons a week. The majority of that semester was Yawm al-Akhir. So you can easily go into a lot of detail. But inshallah, once we study the book Al-Aqidah Al-Wasitiyah, in there it has a lot about the last day. And Qadr will be a decent amount, maybe 1 lesson, maybe 2. Allah. So let's start with the first pillar of Iman. So if you go to page 184, the first pillar of Iman, belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the foundation. This is the foundation of all of the other pillars. Because all of the other pillars, they come from this first one. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who created the angels. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who sent down the books and sent the, or revealed the books and sent the messengers. Right? So it's all, likewise, He is the one who has decreed for the last day to take place. And it's His qadr. So everything branches off Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who informed us about these things as well. Who is the one that informed us of the angels? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well, but the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is conveying from Allah. That's why he's known as Al-Muballigh, the one who conveys from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And hence he is known as a messenger, i.e. the one who is delivering the message. So who's the one that the message is from? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because this is the foundation, right? The explanation of this can be very, very detailed. The explanation of this can be very, very detailed because it's the foundation of the religion, right? But inshallah, like I just mentioned previously, we will go into some sort of detail. We will go into some sort of detail in these issues, but not the most detail, especially when it comes to the other sects and so on. We won't go into those issues too much, just like when he talked about major sins. We just went into detail regarding the belief of Ahlul Sunnah. We didn't go into detail or we didn't even mention the other sects. And that's what I want from you guys, to establish your belief firstly, have a solid foundation, and after that we can talk about the other sects and so on. So we've got a question here, which is, what do we have to believe in regarding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or what do we have to believe regarding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, in his explanation, he mentions that there are 4 things. There are 4 things that we have to believe in. And this, those who have studied Usul al-Thalatha with me know. Rafiq, what are the 4 things?
Creation.
That's Qadr, that's a different topic. Riyadh. Kabirul. What are the 4 things that we have to believe regarding Allah?
Will writing.
That's Qadr, that's Qadr. And even that's in the wrong order. Al-ilm, knowledge, then writing, and then will, and then creation. Who knows?
The existence one.
Yeah, the existence one. What's that? Right. The first thing is that we have to believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. And the second, third, and fourth, the 3 types of Tawheed. The Rububiyyah of Allah, the Uluhiyyah of Allah, and then the Asma wa Sifat. So the first is that Allah exists. The second in His Rububiyyah, His Lordship. The third in His Uluhiyyah, in His worship. And fourth in His Asma wa Sifat, His names and attributes. Okay, so inshallah, what we're going to do is that we're going to go through each of these points regarding the existence of Allah in His Rububiyyah, His Uluhiyyah, and Asma wa Sifat. Today's lesson, inshallah, will be just focused on the first one, the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then next lesson we'll take a few lessons talking about the 3 types of Tawheed. So if you go on to the next page, we firstly talk about the belief in the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now there are some ulama that when they talk about the existence of Allah, they add it into Rububiyyah. So when they talk about Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, what is Tawheed al-Rububiyyah? We'll get to it, inshallah. But, Kabirun?
Tawheed of lordship,
Yeah, definition.
Allah the creator.
Weren't you complaining about the exam being easy?
That's
That's Riyadh, right? Riyadh, go on. Listen, I'm doing detail. I'm trying to do more research and trying to make it more detailed because that's what you keep asking me. But if you can't answer what Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is,
Worship every part. It necessitates uluhiyyah and
that's not definition. That's the points. Riyan,
you single out Allah in His lordship and not
what does that mean, his lordship?
His ability, His power.
Yeah.
الخالق المرب دون فعلين.
To single out.
Yeah.
That is the creator, the provider, sustainer.
That's one definition. Allah, to single out Allah in His creation. He's the only creator, He's the only provider, and He's the controller of all affairs. No, that's like what it necessitates explanation. I'm talking about definition. What are you gonna say?
To single out Allah in His actions.
Single out Allah in His actions. That's also another definition. Inshallah, we'll get to you again. And you guys, you can't be complaining about an easy exam and you can't answer that question. Hurry up. Right. So Rububiyyah is to single out Allah in His actions, and the main actions is that He's the only creator, He's the only provider, He's the one that controls all affairs, okay, and so on. And that cannot take place if Allah is not there. Right? So therefore, and there's also some other ways that we're going to get to as well. And therefore, some ulama, they when they explain this issue, they add it into Ar-Rububiyyah. They talk about it into Rububiyyah. So Rububiyyah will be split into two parts. Firstly, wujudullah, the existence of Allah, and the second is af'alullah, the actions of Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he says, سمعت الشيخ الإسلام تقي الدين ابن تيمية قدس الله روحه يقول, I heard Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah say, كيف يطلب الدليل على من هو دليل على كل شيء? How can, or كيف يطلب الدليل, نعم. How can a proof be sought for the one who is a proof for everything? The one who is a proof for everything. How can a proof be sought for the one who is a proof for everything? وكان كثيرا ما يتمثل بهذا البيت. And Ibn Taymiyyah many times would use as an example this following line of poetry. وليس يصح في الأذهان شيء إذا احتاج النهار إلى دليل. Which means وليس يصح في الأذهان شيء. Nothing is correct in the minds إذا احتاج النهار إلى دليل. If the day requires a proof. If the day requires a proof. The day, night day.
Oh.
Don't worry, I'll get to the explanation. Just write this down, inshallah. And then he says, huh?
Is that the
Second what?
statement?
No, same statement, same statement. ومعلوم أن وجود رب تعالى, and it is known that the existence of the Lord exalted, exalted He is أظهر للعقول, it is more clear for the intellects, والفطر, and natural inclinations, يعني الفطرة, من وجود النهار, from the existence of the day. From the existence of the day. ومن لم يرى ذلك في عقله, and whoever does not see that in his intellect, and whoever does not see that in his intellect, وفطرته, and his fitrah, فليتهمهما, then let him accuse both of them. Let him accuse both of them. So I repeat his statement. So Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah says, I heard Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah say, قدس الله روحه, may Allah purify his soul, say, how can the proof be sought for the one who is a proof for everything? And he used to, Shaykh al-Islam used to use the following line of poetry a lot of times and Shaykh al-Islam used to mention the following lines of poetry as a proof. وَلَيْسَ يَصِحُّ فِي الْأَذْهَانِ شَيْءٍ إِذَا احْتَاجَ النَّهَارُ إِلَى دَلِيلٍ. Nothing in the mind is correct if the day requires a proof. And it is known that the existence of the Lord is more apparent for the intellects and fitr, which is plural of fitrah, min wujud nahar, from the existence of the day. And whoever does not see that in his intellect and fitrah, then let him accuse both of them. What he is saying here, what is he saying here, right? Shaykh al-Islam rahimahullah, he's saying, or let me just explain the line of poetry, you understand what he's saying. He's saying, وَلَيْسَ يَصِحُّ فِي الْأَذْهَانِ شَيْءٍ. Nothing in the mind can be correct. Meaning, nothing that I think and I understand, nothing will make sense if إذا احتاج النهار إلى دليل. If the day requires a proof, i.e., when it's daytime, do you need somebody to explain to you that it's daytime? What is it right now, day or night? Right. Anyone got any doubt on that? No doubt whatsoever, right? That's it. That's what he's saying. He's saying, look how clear that is. Look how, that's just something which is known by necessity. Little kids can tell you it's night or day without just by looking within a split second, they'll know. So he's basically saying that knowing the existence of Allah is like knowing that it's daytime outside. And if you need somebody to explain to you that this is nighttime, then that person's got an issue in his brain, right? If you have to sit down and be like, look, that's all black, that's the sky. At night, the sky is black. Why? Because the sun is not there. The sun is yellow. The sun brings light. Yeah, so at daytime, there's light outside. If you need to explain something, either, he's not reached the age of Tamiz, he's at 2 years old, or there's something wrong with him, right? Well, he's saying the same thing. He's saying that how can a person, look for a proof for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's that which is the most clearest thing which is there. And for this reason, many of the Salaf, they did not mention proofs regarding the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You won't find that in their statement a lot. Yeah, here and there, I might mention a few now. But you won't find that in their statements. Why? وَلَيْسَ يَصِحُّ فِي الْأَذْهَانِ شَيْءٍ إِذَا احْتَاجَ النَّهَارُ إِلَى دَلِيلٍ. It's so clear. It's clear as day. Right? You don't need an explanation for that. And that's why, and we're going to talk a bit about the history in a second, right? That it's only recently people started rejecting the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you look throughout history, you will not find anyone who, maybe apart from the odd person, but generally as communities and as nations, you will not find any that rejected the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As-Suddi, he said, who's from the Salaf, لَيْسَ فِي الْأَرْضِ أَحَدٌ مِّن وَلَدِ آدَمَ. There's nobody on the earth from the sons of Adam إِلَّا وَهُوَ يَعْرِفُ أَنَّ رَبَّهُ اللَّهُ, except that he knows that his Lord is Allah. There's nobody on the earth from the sons of Adam except that he knows that his Lord is Allah. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he says, أصل المعرفة والإقرار بالصانع. Now these ones are a bit longer, so it's up to you if you know write them down. لا يقف على النظر والاستدلال بل يحصل بديهة وضرورة. The foundational knowledge and acknowledgement of the Creator is not based upon research and istidlal, looking for a dalil. In fact, it takes place naturally and out of necessity. Meaning, every person out of necessity has knows. ولهذا يقر بالصانع جميع الأمم مع عظيم شركهم وكفرهم. And that's why all of the nations acknowledge the Creator whilst they have great shirk and kufr. Whilst they have great shirk and kufr. Meaning, the previous nations, they did shirk, they did kufr, but at the same time, they believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those study Qawad al-Arba' as the first principle. First principle in Qawad al-Arba'. The mushrikun believed in rububiyyah of Allah. They believed in the existence of Allah and that He was the creator and the provider and so on. But then they just committed shirk with Him. But they believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَئِنْ سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَهُمْ لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهُ. If you ask them who created them, they would say Allah. Like with the hadith of Imran bin Hussein, the Prophet asked him that you have these seven deities that you worship. Who is the one that you go to at times of need and so on? He said, الَّذِي فِي السَّمَاءِ, the one who is in the heavens. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah also says, الذي عليه جمهور العلماء أن الإقرار بالصانع فطري ضروري مغروز في الجبلة. That what majority of the scholars are upon is the acknowledgement of the Creator is fitri, is part of the fitrah. ضروري, يعني necessary. مغروز في الجبلة, it is sown into the nature of man. ولهذا كان دعوة عامة الرسل إلى عبادة الله وحده لا شريك له. And that's why the call of all of the messengers was to worship Allah alone without committing shirk with Him. وكان عامة الأمم مقرين بالصانع مع إشراكهم به بعبادة ما دونه. And all of the previous nations acknowledged the Creator with their shirk by worshipping those who are lesser than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, a question may be asked, which is that if this is so clear, then why do we need to prove this foundational belief? Why do we need to prove this foundational belief? And the answer is that the sons of Adam, as time went on, their fitrah changed. Their fitrah, the natural inclination, or the natural disposition that they were created upon, has become corrupted. Has become corrupted. So they need a reminder for the acknowledgement of this natural fitrah that they have been created upon. And they need that ran, as Allah says, that ran, that those shackles, that dirt, and all of the other things which are covering their hearts and covering this acknowledgement, all of that needs to be removed. Ali, give me a pen 1 second. No, stay there, stay there. Stay. Now, so what's happened is, and we're going to talk about the fitrah in a second, but the fitrah has been changed, it's been corrupted. And this is also something, maybe could be some beneficial in terms of da'wah, is that when you are giving da'wah to non-Muslims, you're not teaching them something new, but you are trying to return them back to the fitrah that they were created upon. Okay, and that, a person thinks like that, then maybe the way they give da'wah can be seen in a different way. That they're not trying to teach them something new that they don't know. In terms of information, it might be something new, but in terms of deep down what they feel, that fitrah is there. That's what they have been created upon. So we need to take them back to that, or we need to remove that which is covering that. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he says, الإقرار بالخالق وكماله يكون فطريا ضروريا في حق من سلمت فطرته. Acknowledging the Creator and its completeness, i.e. completeness in acknowledging and believing in the Creator, يكون فطريا ضروريا. It becomes something fitri, and this word's going to come a lot in English translation, I don't like it, but fitri, يعني, from the fitrah, something which the fitrah necessitates. ضروريا, necessary, في حق من سلمت فطرته, for that person who has a sound fitrah, For that person who has a sound fitrah. So when you say it's something that no one should have any doubt in whatsoever because the fitrah shows it, this is for that person who his fitrah remains intact as it was. وإن كان مع ذلك تقوم عليه دلة كثيرة. Even though with that there are many other proofs as well. وقد يحتاج إلى الأدلة عليه كثير من الناس عند تغير الفطرة وأحوال تعرض عليها تعرض لها. And maybe many of the people need proofs when their fitrah has changed and their states, the states and the scenarios that they are in, reject the fitrah. So what are some of the proofs for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The proofs are many and of different types. Shaykh al-Islam says, وَطُرُقُهُ لَا تُحْصَى. And its ways cannot be counted. And its ways cannot be counted. I.e. the ways to show the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are so many. But inshallah we will mention 5, I believe, proofs bi'idhnillah. The first is the fitrah. The first is al-fitrah, which is in English is translated to the natural disposition, the natural inclination, and so on. Now, what's the meaning of the word? That's the translation, but what's the actual meaning? Linguistically, the meaning of the fitrah, as mentioned in Lisan al-Arab, volume 5, page 56, he says, الخلقة التي خلق الإنسان عليها. The creation that man has been created upon. The creation that man has been created upon. وشرعا, and as for the Islamic meaning of the word fitrah, then Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah mentions in Majmu' al-Fatawa, volume 4, page 247. So Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he says in Majmu' al-Fatawa, volume 4, page 247, he says, what the meaning is, ما خلق عليه الإنسان, what man has been created upon, what man has been created upon, من القوة العلمية والعملية, from knowledge-based strength and action-based strength, التي تقتضي بذاتها, which necessitate by themselves, الإسلام, Islam. إذا لم يمنعها من ذلك مانع, if no preventatives prevent it from it. If no preventatives prevent it from it. So what Shaykh Hassan mentions, ما خلق عليه الإنسان, what man has been created upon, من القوة العلمية والعملية, from knowledge-based strength and action-based strength, التي تقتضي بذاتها, which necessitate in of themselves, الإسلام. إذا لم يمنعها من ذلك منع, if there's no preventative preventing it from it. So basically, in simple terms, it's the natural way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created mankind, that due to his intellect and due to the way Allah has created them, it allows them to acknowledge the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, what are the proofs of the fitrah? What are the proofs for the fitrah? The proofs are many from the Quran and Sunnah. We'll mention the first one, which is ayat in Surah Al-Rum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in ayah number 30, فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا, and establish your face for the religion حنيفا, in a religion of, in a state of being حنيف. حنيف يعني upon tawheed. فطرة الله, the religion, فطرة الله, and the fitr of Allah, التي فطر الناس عليها, that Allah has made the fitrah of the people upon. Okay. So in this ayah, Allah is saying, establish the face. The face is the most noble part of a person, and it's what a person uses to do sujood. So make that for the religion hanifan alone, and for the religion alone, ay for tawheed, for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. The fitrat Allah, let's leave fitrat Allah as it is for now, the fitrah of Allah, التي فطر الناس عليها. It is the fitrah that Allah created the people upon. Okay, what's the meaning of fitrat Allah? As mentioned in many of the tafsir books, Tabari, Baghawi, Qurtubi, Ibn Kathir, Shawkani's, and so many others, say fitrat Allah, deen Allah al-Islam, the religion of Allah, Islam. So the meaning of that ayah is, make your face and your actions for the religion upon Tawheed alone. And Islam is the fitrah that Allah created mankind upon. And Islam is the fitrah that Allah created mankind upon. Have you got the worksheet? Yeah, get the worksheet. Right, we have another ayah as well, which is, it's in the worksheet, should I say it? I'll say it anyway. Baqarah, ayah number 138. Similar. يعني صبغة الله ومن أحسن من الله صبغة ونحن له عابدون. That صبغة Allah. What's the meaning of صبغة Allah? Mujahid said صبغة Allah al-Islam. The meaning of صبغة Allah is al-Islam. فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليها, which is the fitrah of Allah that He created the fitrah of the people upon. So that's Mujahid, will suffice with statement of the Tabi'een. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah and Raghib al-Asfahani say the same as well. As for the proofs from the Sunnah regarding the fitrah, we have Hadeeth Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, very famous Hadeeth, where the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says in Bukhari and Muslim, ما من مولود إلا يولد على الفطرة. There is no newborn except that it is born upon the fitrah. There is no newborn except that it is born upon the fitrah. فأبواه يهودانه وينصرانه أو يمجسانه. And the or his the newborns, two parents turn him into a Jew or into a Christian or into a Majusi. So here this hadith is quite clear. Allah, every newborn, every baby that is born, it is born upon the fitrah, upon Islam, upon acknowledging the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What causes them to deviate from that? Their parents. And it's not restricting, this hadith is not restricting it to the parents, but the parents are from the biggest and greatest of factors that would, direct the child into a certain direction. But it can also be the environment that they live in, what they are exposed to on their phones and the shows that they're watching, all of these things. And if you notice, this hadith also, it doesn't say, oh, yusallimanihi. And as a parent that turn him into a Jew or a Christian or a Majusi or a Muslim. The hadith doesn't say that. What does that show? It shows that the asl, the foundation of fitrah is Islam. Shaykh al-Islam rahimahullah, he says, فإنه لو لم يكن المراد بالفطرة الإسلام. If the He says, verily, if the intent of the fitrah was not Islam, if the intent of the fitrah was not Islam, لَمَا سَأَلُوا عَقِبَ ذَلِكَ, they would not have asked after this, or straight after this. They would not have asked straight after this. And if you look at the narrations of this hadith in Sahih Muslim, the following narration has a bit of an extra, right? So straight after this, what do they say? أَرَأَيْتَ مَنْ يَمُوتُ مِنْ أَطْفَالِ الْمُشْرِكِينَ وَهُوَ صَغِيرٌ. Do you see from those who die from the babies of the mushrikeen whilst they are young? They said to the Prophet, do you see from those who die from the babies of the mushrikeen whilst they are small? I.e., they're asking the Prophet, okay, what about if a baby was to pass away? Okay, what does Shaykh al-Islam say? لأنه لو لم يكن هناك ما يغير تلك الفطرة لم يسألوه. If there was nothing that changed the fitrah, they wouldn't have asked. So the Sahaba knew that the asl, the fitrah is Islam. So if they're still young and the fitrah hasn't been changed, nor has the pen started to write down their actions, and they don't have aql, they don't have intellect. So the Sahaba asking, okay, the parents are mushrikun, they're also bring on the kids. So that shows that they understood that the asl is Islam. And here I've written aql, I proof from the aql. The proofs from intellect are many. We're going to mention a few, inshallah. But Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah mentions a lot in one of his books called Dar Ta'arud, Al-Aql wal-Naql. If you read from volume 8, page 456 onwards, volume 8, page 456 onwards. Likewise, Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he mentions 16 different ways in his book Shafa' al-Alil, page 303 to 306, page 303 to page 306. And Ibn Abil Izz summarized that in his explanation of Al-Tahawiyyah, volume 1, page 34, 35. I know I'm mentioning these references, you don't have to memorize them, but anyone who wants more information can go back to that, inshallah. And there are many, examples of this. An example of that, or the fitrah, is how a person knows they need to, they need to stay healthy, or they need to stay alive. Even if they're not studied that, nor have they studied how to be healthy, nor have they studied what are the things to stay away from. Person naturally knows, okay, I need to stay away from these things and I need to be doing these things. The fitrah is like that. Even a person doesn't study Islam in depth, right? He still has the foundational understanding and belief in their heart. But that's why if the fitrah was to change and so on, they are not held to account unless they have reached, unless the message of Islam has reached them. Unless the message of Islam has reached them. So that's very important, that the hujjah has to be established against them. Right. We talked about the fitrah, and we proved it from the Quran and Sunnah. But now, how does the fitrah, how does it prove the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The first way is that the fitrah from all of mankind and jinn kind, it naturally causes a person to acknowledge the existence of the Creator. That's a very clear point. That's a very clear point. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he says, من المعروف عند السلف والخلف. It is known from the Salaf and the Khalaf. Khalaf يعني later scholars. أن جميع الجن والإنس معترفون بالخالق مقرون به. That all of the jinn and the ins, jinn kind and mankind, acknowledge the Creator and believe in Him. And later on, after a while, he says, فعلم أن أصل الإقرار بالصانع والاعتراف به مستقر في قلوب جميع الإنس والجن. So it is known that the foundation of acknowledging the Creator is something which is well established in the hearts of all of the mankind and jinn. وأنه من لوازم خلقهم, and it is from that which their creation necessitates. ضروري فيهم, something necessary in them. وإن قدر أنه حصل بسبب, and even if somebody was to say that it took place due to a reason, كما أن اغتذاءهم بالطعام والشراب هو من لوازم خلقهم, just as eating food and drink is from that which their creation that necessitates. And if somebody is living, do you need somebody to sit you down and say, look, you need to eat and you need to drink, otherwise you're gonna die. Everyone knows that, okay, I need to eat. وذلك ضروري فيهم, that is something which is necessary in them. Ibn بالعز الحنفي says, القلوب مفطورة على الإقرار به أعظم من كونها مفطورة على الإقرار بغيره من الموجودات. The hearts are created upon the fitrah, upon acknowledging Allah, and that is greater than the fitrah upon believing in other than Him. كما قالت الرسل فيما حكى الله عنهم, just as the messenger said, as Allah narrated in the Quran, قالت رسلهم في الله شك فاطر السماوات والأرض. The messenger said, في الله شك, in Allah, do you have a doubt? Is there a doubt in Allah? فاطر السماوات والأرض, the creator of the heavens and the earth. Yeah. And also we got Shaykh Astani, who's the Ash'ari, but he is one of the most knowledgeable people when it came to different sects and so on. He's got a few books, which if you want to learn about sects and stuff, is one of the foundational books. Not foundation in the sense that not a book that I would advise a beginner to read, but a book that if you want more information about different sects, it would be, you would have to go back to. But obviously that would be for somebody who has studied. Anyways, I've got some long statements of him, but he says the same thing. He says, as for negating the existence of, I'm summarizing, negating the existence of a creator, then I have not seen that this is a statement of anyone. So what's he's somebody who's very knowledgeable regarding different sects and nations and religions and so on. He said, I do not see this to be a statement of anyone. وَلَا أَعْرِفُ عَلَيْهِ صَاحِبُ مَقَالَةٍ, and I do not know any person who has said this statement. إلا ما نقل عن شرمذة قليلا من الدهرية, apart from mention one person. الدهرية who, I don't know if they're Muslim. No. Right, number two, the second way the fitrah proves this point is باحتياج كل إنسان في ذاته إلى مدبر هو منتهى الحاجات, is that it's natural in a person that he feels that he needs someone to take care of his affairs. That he needs someone or something to take care of his affairs. And this is, subhanAllah, especially in the previous nations. You'll find that you will not find any previous nation except that they all had some sort of deity that they would turn to. Whether it was Allah, whether it was other than Allah, right? They had some sort of deity. And some of them did not even have the necessary means to live a life, but they would have a deity that they would worship. A historian, now I've left a blank here because I've got his name in Arabic and I do not think his name is Arabic name, so I don't want to write in English. It says here, Al-Ighriqi Bazmak. Al-Ighriqi Bazmak. You guys can, maybe I don't type in Google English name and come up. Okay. Anyways, he says, Al-Ighriqi Bazmak. قد وجدت في التاريخ مدن بلا حصون ولا قصور ولا مدارس, that I found in history cities. I found in history cities. Rayyan is searching it. Can't find him. Ighriqi Bazmak. Huh? So he says, I found in history cities without fortresses and without palaces and without schools. ولكن لم توجد أمة بلا معابد. But there is no nation without معابد. معابد يعني places of worship. Temples, no temples. Number three is that the fitrah causes a person to turn back to Allah at times of calamities. The fitrah causes a person to turn back to Allah at times of calamities. And it's something that we see even from the atheists themselves. When a calamity and the plane's about to crash, what do they say? Oh God, they turn looking up. The ayat are many. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Yunus, ayah number 90. Surah Yunus, ayah number 90. حتى إذا أدركه الغرق قال آمنت بالله قال آمنت أنه لا إله إلا الذي آمنت به بنو إسرائيل وأنا من المسلمين. That when they're about to drown, that's when they say, Amantu, I believe. La ilaha illa, there's no deity except الذي آمنت به بنو إسرائيل, except the one who Banu Israel believed in. وأنا من المسلمين, I am from the Muslims. Then we have the other ayah, Surah Yunus, also ayah number 22. حتى إذا كنتم في الفلك وجرين بهم بريح طيبة وفرحوا بها جاءتها ريح عاصف. Long ayah, but same meaning or similar meaning. So this is all to do with the fitrah. Now we want to the second proof, which is al-adillatul aqliyah. Al-adillatul aqliyah. Again, al-adillatul aqliyah are many. The intellectual, so aqliyah means what? Intellectual proofs. The intellectual proofs, they are many. Right? Some people may think that Islam doesn't talk about these intellectual proofs and so on. Like, what Islam is against is philosophy and rhetoric and his made up principles that even the Ahl Bid'ah take from the philosophers. You know, sometimes when they mention it, you don't realize. But if you go back to their books, they've taken a lot of these principles from whom? Aristotle and all these other philosophers. And that's why you find a lot of their conclusions are similar to their conclusion. Islam is against all of that. Philosophy that ends up a person doesn't even know if he's real or not. Are you here? I don't know. Yeah. That's what Islam is against. But as for logical arguments and thinking with your personal intellect, pondering, reflecting, that without a doubt is part of the religion. Many times Allah says, أَفَلَا تَتَفَكَّرُونَ, do you not ponder? أَفَلَا تَتَدَبَّرُونَ, do you not reflect? أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ, do you not use your intellect? Intellect is like the examples we're going to give that Allah mentions in the Quran. Philosophy is, firstly, it includes taking all the principles from the philosophers and all the principles they mention. And secondly is يعني, it's where you just question everything in Allah, this is a difficult way to explain it. Just like the example I give, like, are you here? I don't know. Because that's philosophy. I'll try to get a better answer for you. Let me get back to you on that one, try to get a better answer. We get a good ضابط from the ulama regarding that. Now, as for the different intellectual arguments, and there are many. The first one is دليل الخلق والإيجاد, the proof of creation and existence. So what this basically means is that when a person thinks of creation, ponders over creation, and the fact that there was nothing and now there is a creation, that shows him that there must have been somebody who had created all of this. Or if you see something which is available now, there has to be somebody who had designed it. And you must have heard this argument before. That if you have a phone like this, it didn't just pop into existence. Okay, now that it's here, we all know that there must have been somebody who designed it. There must have been somebody who produced it, a factory where it was made, and so on. Even though we've not seen the factory, we don't know who designed it. We don't, we don't know that, but we believe in it. Why? How do we know? Because of the after effect. So the fact that this is now available to us and it's now present, we know that this could not have come here except with someone or more than one person, uh, making it, designing it. And so this is known as Dalil al-Khalqi wal-Ijad. And subhanAllah, in Arabic, as Nashfa that Shaykh al-Islam mentions, he says, ولذلك يسمى كل صنف من المخلوقات عالما لأنه علم وبرهان على خالق تعالى. That's why every type of creation is considered عالم, which in English we say world. I'll get to that. لأنه علم, because an عالم is an علم, which means sign, a burhan and a proof على الخالق تعالى, for the creator. What he means by عالم is when we say this is the world of the fish, this is the world of the elephants, this is the world of, which are the ants, and so on. Right? In English, you say sometimes, but in Arabic, it's used a lot as well. But if you look at why has that word been given alam, or even the world itself, in Arabic, it is alam. Why is it called alam? It's from the word alam, which means sign. So all this creation is a sign for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we're going to mention a few ayat, I'm going to mention a few more proofs as well, inshallah. So this proof, Dalil al-Khalqi wal-Ijad, it has two points, which is firstly, أن العالم حادث بعد أن لم يكن. That this creation, or this world, is something new that wasn't there before. This world is something new that wasn't there before. And point number two, and everything new must have something which caused it to take place, to cause it to happen. Which is, in this case, when we talk about the world and creation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you look at the Quran, then the way that the Quran uses dalil, the Quran uses this dalil, but the Quran focuses on certain creations and makes people think about that one certain creation. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah says, and this is the one mentioned here, the footnote number 296. Long statement is الطريقة المذكورة في القرآن هي الاستدلال بحدوث الإنسان وغيره من محدثات معلوم حدوثها بالمشاهدة ونحو. It basically mentions the same thing. It basically says that the Quran, it uses the examples of those creations which can be seen and uses that as an example for people to ponder over that creation. Let's look at some of those ayat. We have the first one. أم خلقوا من غير شيء أم هم الخالقون. This is one of the famous ayat. Were they created by nothing, or did they create themselves? So did we just pop into existence from nothing? No. Did we create ourselves? No. So what's the third option? Is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. And some of the Sahaba, if I remember correctly, I think it was Jubayr ibn Mut'im radiallahu anh, he said that when I heard this ayah, this is when Iman was established in my heart. When I heard this ayah, that's when Iman was established in my heart. Also another ayah, قالت رسلهم أفي الله شك فاطر السماوات والأرض. Okay, we don't need the whole ayah, we just need the the messenger said, أفي الله شك, is there a doubt with Allah subhanahu وتعالى فاطر السماوات والأرض, the creator of the heavens and the earth. Many of the Salaf, the Salaf have two, or the ulama have two opinions regarding the meaning of this ayah. The first, أَفِي اللَّهِ شَكْ, يعني, is there a doubt about Allah, i.e. the existence of Allah, i.e. the existence of Allah. And the second is there a doubt in regards to Allah being deserving of worship alone? The second is him deserving worship alone. So the first is regarding the existence of Allah, the second opinion is regarding the uluhiyyah of Allah. But and the second half of the ayah indicates to both the Fatir as-samawati wal ard. Allah is the creator of the heavens and the earth. So if we took the second opinion of uluhiyyah, then it goes back to the principle of rububiyyah necessitating uluhiyyah. But even with the first opinion, which is that Allah exists, we mentioned that the existence of Allah is a part of rububiyyah. So Fatir as-samawati wal ard is a part of that, and Allah is establishing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. And then the third, I've not mentioned the ayat, I didn't get time to actually write down the ayat, but it's Surah Shu'ara, the discussing between Musa alayhi salam and Fir'aun. قال فرعون وما رب العالمين. Fir'aun said, and what is the Lord of all worlds? قال رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما إن كنتم موقنين. He said, the Lord of the heavens and the earth and everything which is between it. قال من حول ولا تستمعون قال ربكم ورب آبائكم الأولين قال إن رسولكم الذي أرسل إليكم لمجنون قال رب المشرق والمغرب بينهما إن كنتم تعقلون. All these ayat, He's the heavens of the east and the west, and He's the Lord of the east and the west and the heavens, and all of this, Musa alayhi salam is mentioning the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that He is the creator of everything. So this proof is from the strongest proofs after the dalil of fitrah. After mentioning fitrah, this is from the strongest of proofs. And this is why even the Bedouins understood this. I said to a Bedouin once, ما الدليل على وجود الرب? What is the proof regarding the existence of the Lord? فقال يا سبحان الله. He said, سبحان الله, إن البعرة لا تدل على البعير وإن أثر الأقدام لا تدل على المسير فالسماء ذات أبراج وأرض ذات فجاج وبحار ذات أمواج ألا يدل ذلك على وجود اللطيف الخبير. He said that verily the remains of an animal, an animal excretes out, it's an indication upon that an animal was here. وإن أثر الأقدام لا تدل على المسير, and the footsteps is an indicator that somebody was walking here. So the skies with all of the stars, and the earth with all of everything which is on the earth, and the mountains, and the seas with all of its waves, does not prove the existence of Al-Latif Al-Khabir, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this also, Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he says even children understand that everything that happens, there has to be somebody who caused that to happen. There has to be something that caused it to happen. And he gave an example. He said that if the kid was looking this way and somebody smacked him on the back of the head, right? He's gonna turn around and say, who did it? Right? Sometimes you're playing with a kid, you tap him on the shoulder or something, and you hide your arm, right? And he's like, looking, who did it? Right? He knows somebody did it. Why? Because a kid realizes that everything which takes place, there has to be somebody or something which caused it to happen. So likewise, everything in this world and this universe, then it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who caused it and designed it and created it.
Which thing was our Bedouin, would you say?
The Bedouin one?
Yeah, was it a Bedouin?
It was a Bedouin. There's a story of
That example you just gave, and the argument was in effect of the ethical ones with
well, I don't know. There's a story of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. And I've got one version here, and I've heard other versions as well. But in this version here, he mentions how somebody asked him regarding what's the proof that there's a creator. And he said, I'll come back to you. I'm thinking about something else. Something else is on my mind. So they asked him, what is it? And he basically said, there's a ship but it's traveling up and down the seas by itself, just carrying things and dropping things off. And they were shocked. They were like, they said, Amajnun anta, you crazy, you feeling okay? Right? And he basically used that to show that if everything's happening, all this creation, but it can't just happen by itself. There was another one, another version that I heard. It's just I heard it. So the one I mentioned to you is I'll put a reference for it. But there's another one that I've heard, which is that he wanted to debate some people regarding this issue. And there was normally a river that he would cross. And one day there was no um, oh, sorry, he crossed that river, but he came late for whatever reason it may be. So when they asked him why you're late, he said, yes, I got to that river and there's normally a person, like a taxi basically, that would take me from the ship, or a little boat that would take me from one side to the river to the other. He wasn't there. But what happened is that a tree fell down, hit the water, hit some other stuff, and basically a boat was made. And then I got on that boat and I got here. That took some time, so that's why I'm a little bit late. So they said, yeah, similar thing. That you feeling okay, how is that possible? But then he said the same thing. He goes, if you can't believe that a little boat got made like that, then how can you believe that this whole universe, this whole creation was just made like that as well? Now, a second dalil aqli is known as dalil al-ihkam wal-itqan. Dalil al-ihkam wal-itqan, the dalil of perfection, the proof of perfection. By the way, I know Rian asked about his question and so on. In terms of English, I don't know what the terminologies are. I don't know what. I'm not studying any of this in English. So even if I translate something from here, I'm translating it from Arabic. Maybe there is a better terminology. Maybe there is a certain argument. But I'm not studying English, so I don't know what it is in English. So I'm just giving you the Arabic for now. If you find out which one it is and so on, let me know. Inshallah, very good. Um, where did you learn it from? Speaker's Corner.
It's a common argument.
Okay, class. Class. Right, it's good. It's not Speaker's Corner. Alhamdulillah. Right. The Dalil of perfection. Now, this Dalil al-Ihkam al-Itqan has a lot of other names. Some ulama call it Dalil al-Takhsis, some call it Dalil al-Taswiyah, Dalil al-Inayah. What this basically means is 2 points. Firstly, that everything in this creation has reached the pinnacle of perfection in its creation. Everything in its creation has reached perfection in creation. And point number 2 is that this perfection necessitates that there was an all-wise, all-knowledgeable designer who created all of it. That necessitates that there was a all-wise and all-knowledgeable creator who created all of this. Now, the examples of this are many, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of them before, right? A lot of them before. So, for example, they call one Dalil al-Anfus, the proof of ourselves, basically. If you look at how we are created, from the fingerprint, from how the eye is created, all that stuff, I'm not going to go into detail right now. A person ponders over that. Look how perfect it is. Like we just mentioned, they can't believe that a boat came together, right? Which in them days, I don't know how advanced a boat would be, right? I'm sure if you get, a few wood together, and that's it, you can cross a river with that. But if you can't believe something like that, how did they believe that something like the eye and how, I'm sure those that do optometry probably can give you a better explanation of how the eye works. Likewise, with fingerprints. Likewise, subhanAllah, even like a woman, when she becomes pregnant, how the full body changes, the ribs move, and this changes and that changes just so that the baby could be there, and then when it's born, and so many things in ourselves, a person ponders, he realizes that it can only be from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ayat are many. The ayat are many. I'm just going to give you references. So make sure you write down the references. I'm not written here. Make sure you write down the references for them. So some general proofs first is Surah An-Naml ayah 88. Surah An-Naml ayah 88. صنع الله الذي أتقن كل شيء. The creation of Allah where He أتقن كل شيء, He perfected everything. That's Surah Namal, ayah 88. We have Surah Sajda, ayah number 7. الذي أحسن كل شيء خلقه. The one who perfected everything that He created. Surah Sajda, ayah number 7. We have Surah Mulk, ayah number 3. ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت. Surah At-Teen, ayah number 4. لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم. Surah Tariq, ayah number 5. فلينظر الإنسان مما خلق. I'm just going to mention the references. You can read them all the time. Yeah. What have I said so far? Number 88, Sajda 7, Mulk 3, Teen 4, Tariq 5, Infitar 8 and 6. Sorry, 6 to 8. Surah Infitar, ayah number 6 to 8. This one's very powerful. Surah Dhariyat 21. This is very powerful. أَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. In your own selves, do you not see? That's very powerful. That's what we're talking about. 21. Now, and even other creations. Surah Yasin 71 to 73. Surah Abasa 24 to 32. Abasa 24 to 32. Surah Hijr 19. Yasin 37. Some more for ourselves. Surah Fussiyat ayah 53. I mentioned the other one, Zariyat 21. Likewise, another proof that comes under this as well is Dalil al-Afaq. Afaq literally means horizons, but it's referring to everything else. So the first one was looking at ourselves, also looking at everything else in the creation, the universal signs of Allah, the universal signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how He created everything else, how He created the animals, the creations, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the earth, how far it is from the sun, and if it was closer we would burn, if it was further away we would freeze, and how the moon is, and the moon causes waves, but if it was closer it would cause, floods and so on. Again, the ayat are many. Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 164. Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 164. Ali Imran 190. Ali Imran 190. Yasin 37 to 40. Yasin 37 to 40. And these are all ayat, and when you guys should read in your own time, just ponder over it. Because these are things that are going to increase you in your iman. These are things which will increase you in your iman. Likewise, Dalil al-Hidayah. What comes under this is the proof of guidance. What he means by guidance is that how Allah has guided each creation to what He needs. Naturally, the animals, naturally they know where to go to get their food. They know what type of animal to hunt or where to go to get their food. Do they go to school where they taught this stuff? They don't. Right? It's just naturally in them. Right? And that each animal knows that for itself what it needs. The fish know what it wants, the big ones, the small ones, they all know what they are, what they need. That's the meaning of ayah, Surah Taha, ayah number 50. Surah Taha, ayah number 50. ربنا الله ربنا الذي أعطى كل شيء خلقه ثم هدى. That our Lord is the one who gave everything, His creation everything, ثم هدى, then He guided. If you read what Imam Sa'idi said, he says ثم هدى, then He guided كل مخلوق إلى ما خلقه له, every creation to what they have been created for. And then he goes on to explain that as well. But this also includes guidance, includes that type of guidance, and it also includes guidance in terms of guidance to Tawheed of Allah, in terms of religion as well. Now, and as for some statements of the ulama in regards to that, again, the statements are many. I've got many statements. How much have I got? I've got about 10 statements. Some are really long. I'll just mention to you a few. For example, Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he says in his book Miftah Dar al-Sa'adah, وَهَذَا كَثِيرٌ فِي الْقُرْآنِ. Miftah Dar al-Sa'adah, volume 2, page 539. Volume 2, page 539. He says, and this is many in the Quran. This is a lot in the Quran. يَدْعُو الْعَبْدُ إِلَى النَّظَرِ وَالْفِكْرِ فِي مَبْدَأِ خَلْقِهِ وَوَسَطِهِ وَآخِرِهِ. That the Quran, it calls a slave to think and to ponder in regards to the origin of his creation, the middle of his creation and the end of his creation. إذ نفسه وخلقه من أعظم الدلائل على خالقه وفاطره. Because he himself and his creation is from the greatest of proofs upon the creator and upon the not upon the creator. وأقرب شيء إلى الإنسان نفسه, and the closest thing to a person is himself. وفيه من العجائب الدالة, and in it are عجائب, amazing things which prove على عظمة الله, the greatness of Allah. ما تنقضي الأعمار في الوقوف على بعضه, which takes people their whole lives just to realize some of them and to understand some of them. وهو غافل عن, whilst he's heedless regarding his whole life. معرض عن التفكر فيه, turning away from pondering regarding it. Likewise, Imam Malik rahimahullah, he was asked this question as well, and then he used as a proof the different languages and the different voice that people have, and the different voices that people have, and the different rhythms that people have. All of that, he said, yeah, look how perfect all of that is. Came now?
Yeah, like 1 minute ago.
نعم, Imam Shafi'i has statement, Ahmad has statements, many of the ulama have other statements. Now, let's move on to the next ones, inshallah. I'll try to hurry up so we can finish the lesson. The third proof is Al-Adilla Al-Shar'iyya. Now, I had in my book, Ayat Al-Anbiya. Point number 3 was actually the signs of the prophets, but we're going to get to that, but I decided to change it to Al-Adilla Al-Shar'iyya. Islamic proofs, or legislative proofs, to make it more broader. That this includes all of the Islamic proofs. For example, the greatest of them being the Quran. The greatest of them being the Quran. And the miracles which are in the Quran. As those that study tafsir with me, we had in our introduction, we had one section which talks about the miracles of the Quran. And I might have done a khutbah on it as well, you can find online. We went to 10 points from the tafsir of Ibn Juzay, rahimahullah, regarding the miraculous nature of the Quran. And from the things which are from the Islamic proofs as well, is anything else in Islam, how ruqya works. You do ruqya and a person's cured and so on. And how a person through Islam finds true contentment. And from the Islamic proofs as well is Ayatul Anbiya, the signs of the prophets, i.e. the miracles of the prophets. Especially when the people saw these miracles, or if we see the after effects of these miracles, that shows that there's a creator. Why? It's because the prophets are doing it with the permission and the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And after they do it, they inform us to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone as well. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah says, Al-Mu'jizatu allati hiya fi'lu khariqin lil-'ada, a miracle which is an action which goes against the norms, تدل بنفسها على ثبوت الصانع, show or prove in of themselves the existence of a creator, كسائر الحوادث, just like all of the other things that happen, new actions that happen. بل هي أخص من ذلك, but it is more specific than that. لأن الحوادث المعتادة ليست في الدلالة كالحوادث الغريبة, because the normal things that take place, they do not have the same effect as the strange things that take place do not have the same effect as the normal things that take place. And he also says, وهذه طريقة السلف من أئمة المسلمين. In another place he says that this is the way of the Salaf from the Imams of the Muslims, فالاستدلال على معرفة الصانع, in regards to using as a dalil to know the creator, وحدوث العالم, and the existence and the creation of the world. لأنه إذا ثبتت نبوته بقيام المعجز وجب تصديقه على ما أنبأهم عنه. Because if prophethood is established through these miracles, then what also has to be established is what they are informing, what the prophets are informing. من الغيوب, from the unseen. ودعاهم إليه, and they call them to it. من أمر وحدانية الله تعالى وصفاته وكلامه, from the tawheed of Allah and his characteristics and his speech. And this is what Musa alayhi salam in his story that we mentioned previously as well. Now Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah mentions that this is from the strongest of proofs. He's got a very, very long statement. He's got a long statement. We can leave them for now, inshallah. But let's finish with this, with here, that even if you look at our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his greatest miracle was what? Was the Quran. as well as so many other miracles from water coming out of his fingers and from splitting the moon and so many other miracles of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the greatest being the Quran, as the Prophet said in the Hadith, ما من الأنبياء نبي إلا أعطي ما مثله آمن عليه البشر. There's no prophet except that there's no one from the prophets except that he was giving something similar that allowed the people to believe in him. وإنما كان الذي أوتيت وحي أوحاه الله إليه. What I was given was the wahy, the revelation that Allah revealed to me. فأرجو أن أكون أكثرهم تابعا يوم القيامة. So I hope to be the one with the most amount of followers on the day of judgment. The fourth proof, إجابة الدعوات. The answering of du'as. The answering of du'as. This is very, clear, subhanAllah. When a person, in times of calamities, he makes sincere dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll find how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he fulfills the conditions of dua, the most important being sincere. Allahu A'lam. Because if a person is sincere, then the others automatically take place that he regrets, and so on. You find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he answers the du'as. Right? If you look at Surah Al-Isra, it's on one page of the Quran, Allah mentions three of the prophets, how they made dua. As soon as they made the dua was accepted. Nuh alayhi Ayyub alayhi salam, and so on. Sorry, it's not Surah Al-Isra, Surah Al-Anbiya. Surah Al-Anbiya, if you read from ayah, I think it's 84 till about 87, something like that. You can read stories about that as well. And likewise, people have seen this as well, and it's from experience of the people as well. And that's why even the Prophet ﷺ, he forbade us and he said, وَاتَّقِي دَعْوَةَ الْمَظْلُومِ. He said to Mu'adh radiallahu anhu when he sent him to Yemen, he said, fear the dua of the one who is being oppressed. إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ اللَّهِ حِجَابٌ. Because there's no veil between him and Allah. If he makes a dua, his dua is accepted. When people see that a person makes certain dua and something happens, right, that's a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the last and fifth proof, أدلة العلم الحديث. The proofs of, what does ilm mean? Ilm? Knowledge. Hadith? Who remembers the linguistic meaning of hadith? Something new. Ilm al-hadith? Sorry, new knowledge. Modern day science, and that's what it's referring to basically. Now, we don't make science a foundational proof for us. Because why? Because science keeps changing. One day they say one thing, another day they say another thing. Even those, du'at, right? Well, the Salafi and non-Salafi, right? Those that would use science as proofs, you speak to them, they'll say, okay, now I've stopped using science and these type of things too much. Why? Because it keeps changing. It keeps changing. So one day they may say something, 2 years later they'll be like, well, we don't believe that in science anymore. Right? So it's not a measuring stick. It's not a foundational point. However, with that being said, at the same time, you can, use some points. It doesn't mean you completely disregard it as well. But there are, sometimes you can use some of those points, some of the discoveries. Sometimes when Allah says something in the Quran, for example, غُلِبَتِ الرُّومُ فِي أَدْنَى الْأَرْضِ, that Allah prophesied that within the next 3 to 9 years, and it took place, I believe, in the 6th or 7th year after this ayah was revealed, the Romans would be defeated في أدنى الأرض, in the lowest point of the earth. And apparently, now with modern day science, they found that where the battle took place was actually the lowest place on the earth. So maybe something like that. It can be used, and I'm sure the examples are many. Okay. Are these terminologies obligatory for us to memorize? The long statements are not. When I mention the long statements, you don't have to know them. But you need terminology, try to learn them. Yeah. دليل الخلق والإيجاد, دليل الإتقان والإحسان, and so on, or إتقان, sorry. Now, with that, inshallah, we'll come to the conclusion of today's lesson. بإذن الله. Next lesson, we'll move on to the other types of Tawheed. So we're going to do a small introduction regarding Tawheed itself. And then we'll move on to Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Hopefully we can take all of Tawheed al-Rububiyyah next lesson. And then we'll move on to lesson after that, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah and Asma al-Sifat. Inshallah. Subhanakallah wa hamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha